I'm Bill Cirone, and I'd like to welcome you to Talking with Teachers, a production of the Santa Barbara County Education Office. Our goal in producing these programs is to introduce our community to some of the outstanding teachers in our local classrooms. Teachers who make a difference every day and who are our community's true unsung heroes. It's a real pleasure for me to introduce to you today Lewandowski, a fourth grade teacher at Cleveland School. Welcome, Leon.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. And before we talk about the magic you work in your classroom, I'd like to begin by painting a brief personal portrait. Where are you from?
I was born in Detroit, Michigan, and I moved to California. I moved considerably in California, but I spent a big chunk of my life from fourth grade to 12th grade in the Santa Cruz Mountains. I lived in a place called Felton in Boulder Creek.
Okay, and where did you go to school?
I went to UC Santa Barbara.
Mm-hmm. And what was your major?
I was a film major.
A film major,
I was a film major at UCSB.
And after you got out of school, tell us about your early jobs.
I've done a lot. I was a mailman at one point. I was a photographer at SeaWorld, Florida. Worked at AAA. Was in hotel management for a number of years. So I've dabbled in a lot of different things.
So then what was the magnet or the lure that drew you into teaching?
I remember looking at the news and reading the papers and seeing that there was a lot of things that I wasn't really happy with the youth of the day. There was teen pregnancy and gang violence, and there was drugs, and I said to myself, I said, someone should make a difference. Someone should go on there and guide these students so they can make the right choice, so they can be more responsible, more respectful. And I said, well, someone better do that. And I went back to my job. It wasn't me. About a year later, I was reading the paper, looking at the news, and still, same thing is happening. I said, my goodness, why won't someone step up and make a difference? I know people were doing it, but not enough. Not enough adults were taking the role of guiding the youth the correct way. And I was so frustrated. Someone should do this. Why didn't someone do it? And I realized, hey, guess what? I'm someone. I can do this. I wasn't really happy with what I was doing. So I stepped into the role of teacher. I said to myself, if I can touch like my corner of the world, I'm probably not the only one doing this. There's probably other people out there who are thinking, hey, someone should make a difference. And if enough people said, I'm someone, then maybe enough people would make a change and guide our youth.
So with that background, I mean, it really drew you into teaching. Was your concern about the condition of youth and what was happening to them and the world today, and you wanted to make a difference. Let's talk about your classroom now.
Okay.
Perhaps the place to start, the words almost seem to fit, is Improvement Week.
Right.
Tell us about that.
Improvement Week is a program I created my first year teaching, and it evolved because that first year teaching I had some students who came in, and some students weren't doing so well, and I had some students who maybe were scoring 20% on a spelling test, and so we'd work on it throughout the year. You know, we got to work on these areas, and it wasn't that they were scoring low because they didn't try. It's that they were having difficulty. So we work and work and work. Halfway through the year, they're up to 50%. Well, the 20% on the report card was an F. Halfway through the year, 50% on the report card was an F. And I got to thinking, my goodness, if that was me and I'm working this hard and I make this improvement and there's nothing to show for it, nothing reflects what the difference, why would I want to keep working? And so I said, let's forget about grades for 1 week and let's focus just on improvement. And that's what it was. And what we did, we chose, I think, 5 or 6 areas that first year. Spelling and math, reading, writing, even homework, tardies and absences. And I surprised the students. I said, they came into class one day, and on their desk was where they were in this area. And suddenly, everybody forgot about competing against one another. They weren't trying oh, you got a D, I got a C, or I got an A, I got a B. It was, you need to compete against yourself. And so students were focused on that. And so now you have a level playing field where students are focused on improving for the sake of improving. And it was great that first year, every single student improved in at least one area. And what I learned from doing this over the years, the students who improved the most were the students who had the most room to improve. The high achieving students, that was really hard because they're at here and they've got to go from here to here. They've got that much room to improve. Whereas the students who are strugglers, they're down here, they've got this much room to improve. So suddenly they see improvement and they see it's attainable and like, wow, I can do this. And it was a great program. The students loved it.
It's a great fundamental concept. You take people where they are and have them improve based on the baseline of knowledge.
Exactly, because little steps, they lead to giant leaps.
Exactly.
Improvement leads to achievement.
Well, did you get the community involved?
We did. Eventually, I went around and solicited the help of local businesses. And I told them what I was doing, and they said, yeah, I'd like to sponsor an area. And so maybe a local grocery store will say, yeah, I'll give all the students who improve in math, sandwich from our deli. You have a fast food restaurant. Say, well, I'll give them shakes if they improve in another area. The wonderful thing is that the students, I didn't tell them. It was a secret. So here they are, and they're working hard for intrinsic reasons. They're working because they want to improve. And I've done this this is the 6th year, I think it is. And so far, every single student has improved in at least one area. There's never been a student who has not improved in one area. So they're working for themselves. But then you get the surprise at the end where they're being recognized and acknowledged by the community. And so they're like, I did this for myself. And suddenly, wow, I got a shake too. And so they didn't do it for the shake. They did it for themselves.
And did the program expand?
The 4th year, 4 of the teachers said, I want to get involved with that at Cleveland School. So they got involved, and it worked out so well that last year we had the first annual Cleveland School Improvement Week.
Yeah, and the program hasn't gone unrecognized. You've received several awards in recognition for the program, am I correct?
A few, yeah. It was recognized in Creative Classroom magazine. There's a program that's sponsored by Northern Life Insurance, I think is what it's called. And what they do is they recognize 2 programs a year per state. And in 2000, Improvement Week was recognized as one of those, and it also received a Disseminator grant last year.
Fantastic. Are there stories about students that were affected in an unusual way by the program?
There are probably scores, if not hundreds of them, but there's one that sticks out, and it was my 2nd year of the program. And what I do in my classroom, we have multiplication tests, and the students, they work at their own level. So some students are working on their 4s, some students are working on their 8s, some are on their 9s. And when they pass it, they move on to the next one. Well, there was this one young lady who was stuck on her 6s for 3 months, and I won't forget this. For 3 months, that's 90 days working on your 6s. And this young lady had basically given up. She said, in her mind, she says, I can't do this. I can't pass this. And so she's just kind of going through the motions, and she knows every time I take this, I'm going to fail it. And she does it. We'll get to Improvement Week, and we really kick off Improvement Week with music and banners and pumping them up. And so I said, you guys got to improve. And so she goes ahead and she improves, and she passed her 6s, which is a great story, but it doesn't end there. What's great about this is that she improved in her 6s, and she passed them, and then Improvement Week ended. The next week, we're back to normal school again. But suddenly she realizes, hey, I can do this. I don't need a week to tell me I can do this. I don't need the music or the banners. I do this myself. Mr. Lewandowski didn't help me. I mean, he helped me, but he didn't show me the answers. I can do this. So the next week she passed her 7s. And the following week she passed her 8s. She passed her multiplication. This girl who I thought was going to be on 6s until she was 27 passed all her multiplication. And it just shows the students that they have the power.
It illustrates the point well. And I understand, speaking of stories, that one of your stories was actually published by Jack Canfield in his Chicken Soup for the Teacher's Soul.
It was published in Chicken Soup for the Teacher's Soul. It was my first year teaching, and I was pretty nervous. And they gave me my roster of students, and I asked questions about who's this on the roster, and who's that on the roster. And I got to one student, and they told me this student he's really low achieving. and he's smaller than the rest of the students, and he hides under the table, and he doesn't know the alphabet, and he can count to 5, and he can barely spell his name. He can't read. And I smiled. I said, "Oh, okay." And inside, to be honest with you, I was scared. You know, my first year teaching, and I said, "Oh my goodness, what am I going to do?" And so I asked, "What do you do?" And they said, "Well, we went to the yard sale and got a bunch of toys. And so when there's an activity that's too difficult for him, he's working with the toys." And I said, okay. And I thought to myself, "Oh, please, don't give me this student." Now, I know that sounds terrible. Here I am, a teacher, telling you I don't want a student. It was my first year, and I thought to myself, you know, if I can just get 1 year under my belt, give me whatever, but let me have 1 year. That's not going to be too difficult. And he showed up, and I said to him, "Okay, well, let's go ahead and do our assessments, and let me ask you to read this." And I gave him something to read, and he said, "Well, I can't read." And I said, well, just go ahead. I know it's probably hard, but just show me what you can do." He looked at me and said, "I can't read." And so I said, "Okay." And he couldn't read. He really couldn't. And, well, I had him for a while, and I realized that this student wasn't a hopeless case. He wanted to learn. He really wanted to learn. And I didn't either give him a box of toys. I ended up teaming him with other students. I modified lessons for him, and he really wanted to learn. We gave him tutorials to help him with his reading. I gave him his first book ever, the first book he ever read and owned, and he actually memorized the book. He'd go home and just memorize it because he's heard the story so many times. And what he would do in my class is he would draw pictures when I wasn't looking. He'd sneak to the side, get construction paper, draw very preschool-like pictures, stick figures, happy faces, stars. He'd stick them on my desk. And I'd go back to my desk and I'd look and I'd see them. And I'd look over at him. He'd be smiling like this at me. And I'd give him a nod and he'd go back to his work. And one day in May, that first year, I found this yellow piece of paper on my desk and it had a big smiley face on it and little stars. And I knew it was from him, so I called him over. And I said, "Did you do this?" He said, "Yes." And I said, "Why did you do this?" And he looked at me like, "Don't you know?" And he said, "You helped me read." And it was so powerful. I was like, this is my first year teaching. I said, wow, that's what it's like to be a teacher. I get it now. And so I taught him a lot, but he taught me so much. I mean, I was judging him. I didn't want him because of what I was told by someone else. And he taught me that children want to learn, regardless of whatever level they're at. And he also taught me what it's like to be a teacher. And, surprise, I'm not going to give it to you, but this is the actual picture. I'm very proud of it.
I'm glad Jack Canfield heard about and caught the magic of that story.
Well, yeah,
It deserves to be published.
Thank you. The interesting thing is I wrote that story because there were a lot of issues in politics and teaching, still are. And I was thinking that some teachers and some students were getting a bad rap, and I wanted people to realize there were real people and real stories. And I wrote this for the Santa Barbara Independent magazine, and they ran it, and someone got wind of it at Chicken Soup for the Soul, and they contacted me and asked me if they could run it. And I thought about it. Oh, sure, what the heck.
That's great. And I know another area that's a big passion for you is team building.
Yes.
Why is that, and how does it work in your classroom?
Well, as far as why is that, the reason why I became a teacher, as I said, it was because I think we need to make sure that we have strong communities and children and young people making the right decisions, being respectful, being responsible. I'd love them to be academically smart also, but what makes the world work is having people that work well together. And so my classroom becomes a community. It becomes like a smaller scale of the world in general. And we have lots of different types of team building activities, and we have a secret word in our class and a secret song, and that word and that song is tied into that specific classroom and that specific year. It changes every year. I'm not allowed to divulge what it is. You can ask the student, but I can't let you know. But what it does is it brings them together. They're all connected to the song. They're all connected to this word, and the word is actually really, really helpful because what happens is people, adults or children, they sometimes they get worked up over the petty things. I see it in my classroom. That's my pencil. No, it's my pencil. I was first in line. No, and they're little things. And what this word does, it reminds students what a community is all about. So sometimes there'll be a bickering, and one student will realize, this is ridiculous, and they'll say the word. And it's 95% of the time, You go, oh, what are we doing? Here, you can borrow the pencils. Make sure you give it back. Or no, you can be in front. And sometimes two people are so heated they can't see it. Someone else on the outside says a word and they suddenly realize, oh yeah, you're right. This is kind of ridiculous. And it's just kind of nice, and they hold on to that word throughout the year. And then I'd like them to be able to carry the idea with them. I don't expect them to go around saying secret words to strangers because people are going, what are you talking about? But the idea would be great too if we can expand that to our community.
What is Circle Sit?
Circle Sit is one of the activities I do for team building, and what the student, I didn't make it up. I wish I had made this up, but I use it. And what we do is we have students standing in a circle, shoulders in, so they're facing the person's head in front of them, and it's a real tight circle, and I'm right in the middle. And what they have to do is they have to sit down when I tell them to sit down, and they have to trust that there will be a lap behind them. So I say 1, 2, 3, sit. And so first off, it works as trust. They have to trust that the person behind them will sit down, and the person in front of them has to trust that they're going to sit down. So they have to trust each other. Second thing, it shows that if one person falters in this, it affects the entire community, because it's like a domino effect. If one person doesn't sit down, person behind them or person in front of them will sit, and there won't be a space for them. And suddenly that lap's gone, and it just goes right around like a domino. And the kids enjoy it. And the first time every year, they can't do it. They can't do it because they're not sure. They don't know how to work together. There's boys touching girls, and they don't know who's their friend in class. By halfway through the year, generally, what they're doing is they say, okay, let's do this, and they figure out who goes where. They figure out, no, you need to be closer here. They don't care if it's a boy or a girl, and when they succeed, they're so elated. We did it. We worked together to do this thing. It's wonderful, and they love it.
I understand that you also have dreams for a student improvement scholarship fund.
Yes.
How would that work?
Well, we actually started this. We got it underway partially, and then a lot of stuff has been happening lately, and it's been difficult to keep it going. So we're putting it on hold now. But Improvement Week itself was a wonderful idea in the classroom, and I wanted to expand that because I was concerned that if we have this in the classroom in elementary schools, students will be going for it, and yeah, this is great, I'm going to improve. But then if they move on, junior high school, are they going to remember what happened in second grade? Are they going to remember improvement? Are they going to hold on to that? And so I said, what can we do to help them and achieve improvement in their life? And I came up with this idea, and it was what teachers would do. They would identify a student in their classroom, a student who made the most improvement in the classroom. And when they identify them, they say, you're the one who made the most improvement. We have a $5,000 scholarship for you for post-secondary education. Generally, if you look at the students who are dropping out, are the students who are strugglers. If they're struggling and they're not showing progress and no one's recognizing them, what's the use of being in school? But if we catch them early on and plant the seed, hey, you know what? We believe in you. You've proven to yourself that you can do it. And now there's a financial means to go on past high school. We're hoping to keep more kids in school. And they didn't have to go to university. They don't even have to go to state school. They can go to city college. They can go to whatever it is. I mean, they can go to some place as long as it's accredited. And it's a great idea. It seems simple, and it gives a lot of students what they need to continue on and avoid dropping out of school.
Well, we'll have to find ways to ensure that happens and comes back. And I could also see how in sync you are while you went into teaching. When we did the background, you were talking about the vision to help kids, and as we talk about what's happening in your classroom, it's the continual emphasis on continual self-improvement, team building, issues that relate back to your original motivation. On a related topic, let's talk a little about some issues in education today. And the state, for example, is moving towards a system of accountability where there are not only state standards, but the accountability system is really tied heavily to student achievement based on tests. And you've talked a little about testing, but more in the concept of how we measure people from where they are, set that as the base, to how much they've improved not in terms of a pass-fail type of situation on a test. Clearly, this direction has to affect your students and yourself as a teacher. Could you comment on that?
Absolutely, it absolutely does affect the atmosphere in my classroom.
In what way?
Well, there's this feeling that there's a pressure that we've got to make sure these students are doing well on these tests, and as we know, there's consequences. There's consequences if our students don't do well enough on the test for a certain amount of years, and because of those consequences, there's a lot of emphasis on this test, and so we're bringing in more things to the classroom to make sure they do well on the test, and which is important. We want them to do well on the test, but also it's important that we can still be able to focus on different aspects that are not necessarily on the test. The test doesn't reflect everything that we're supposed to be teaching. And once again, I want my students to be able to read and write and be able to do math, but I also want
to take them where they are.
Right, I want them to be active community members. My concern, I'm concerned that one day down the road we may have a bunch of students who can do well on this test because we really emphasize the test, but may have trouble with aspects that are not on the test because of the high stakes involved with the test. There might be so much focus on these areas that other things may kind of be pushed aside or may not be emphasized as much. So that you have students who look like they're achieving really well, but then you give them another type of test. They can't do it. Or you put them in a social situation where you're just talking about something and they don't know because it wasn't covered in class because it wasn't on a test. And that's my concern, is that we may end up having students that look good on paper, but what's it going to do to our community?
Okay, and let's take the flip side of that. Now, let me put a magic wand in your hand and say you could create an accountability system of your very own for the state. What would that look like?
I don't know the perfect one, but I think there's some ideas. First off, I would love somehow to get improvement involved in there, but that's probably not enough. I believe that our teachers are probably doing a pretty good job. We've got teachers who know the standards, who are teaching the standards, and it'd be great if the teachers can test what they've taught instead of having it coming from an outside source. So teacher-made tests is a way to start. But once again, I'm not saying this is the end-all.
But it's one additional
part
of a multiple assessment.
Exactly, because what happens is, let's say, for instance, my students are going to be doing they understand fractions. I've taught them fractions. And so then they get the state test, and it says that Susie has snow shoveled 1/3 of her yard. Like, students go, snow shovel? What's snow? You know, I mean, it makes sense if you're in Vermont, but my students, they may throw them off. They're not even looking at fractions; they're looking at the snow. So I think if we can start with the teachers and the teacher-made tests, but also get the community involved, because the community needs to see, well, what do our kids need to know to survive in our community? You know, do we talk about the beach? Yeah. Do we talk about the snow? Probably not.
Yeah, so your assessment program would look very different, as I think would be the assessment program designed by most teachers and where we're going now. Let's reflect for a moment. What is the best part about teaching?
It's the food. No, I'm just kidding. The best part about teaching, I would have to say, is I enjoy hearing from my own students, because once again, I came into this for so I could have the youth grow and make the right choices. And when I hear back from my students, I love it. My students come back and they visit me, and I like that. But I also keep in touch with a lot of my students via mail. A lot of my students have moved and live far away, and it's been, some of the students I had when in third grade, now they're in junior high school, and they're writing to me, and not just writing to me, how you doing? And, I had a nice birthday party, but they're asking me questions and asking me advice, and they're telling me things are going on, and I can go ahead and respond to them because they trust me. They look to me as someone that knows something, but they trust the fact that I care about them. And I like the fact that I'm going to see these kids when they're adults. I'm going to see their kids, you know, and I love the fact that I've touched their lives. That's what I came here for.
And how about the most challenging part, the flip side of that?
Well, if you asked me that 2 years ago, probably a different answer. But right now, it's what we talked about. It's the testing right now. The swing that we're feeling right now in schools. Like I said, my community activities, I feel like they're being squeezed out, or if I do them, I just kind of touch on them, and that's not what I was here for. And I mean, that's what I am here for more than that. But I really got involved with this because I wanted to make sure that we had kids who make the right choice.
Well, you've inspired a lot of young people. Was there teachers that inspired you?
There were a good handful of them. One that comes to mind is Preston Q. Boomer. Now, you can't forget that name, just the name alone. Preston Q. Boomer, we called him Mr. Boomer, or we called him Boom. And he was a chemistry and physics teacher in high school. And he was a work of art. His hair was always kind of wild, and he always wore turtlenecks, and pants that were too short, and his socks were different colors. He had all these little quirks about him and these little phrases that stuck in your mind. And so here I am, 15 years later, and I still remember a lot that he's taught me. I've got up on tables many times. I use different voices. I become different characters. I just do things differently because the same thing over and over and over again can get boring. And Boomer taught me that, gosh, your classroom does not have to be boring.
Leon, we're running out of time. If you could send a very brief message to young people today, what would it be?
I have a sign on my wall that says, always give 100% effort. You never know when it's going to pay off. And you can go as deeply into that as you want, but for yourself, 100% give it for yourself, and because other people will recognize that at one point.
And how about a message to parents?
Celebrate education. It doesn't have to be multiplication and writing. It can be celebrate the fact that you learned something new today on TV. Let your children know that you're learning also, and embrace the fact that they can teach you and you can teach them.
And how about fellow teachers?
Remember who the professionals are. We were trained for this, and we know our children. We have 180 days out of the year, 6 hours a day with them. We know where they're at. The state may mandate certain things. We may get programs. We may get scripts of what we're supposed to say. And programs may be pushed upon us, but we have to realize we know what's best for our students, and we need to do what's best. And sometimes it can be difficult, but we've got to make sure we stick to our guns.
And how about elected officials?
For elected officials, I don't know that about the state mandating testing. The high stakes testing is really going to get the effect that we're looking for. I know we're looking for intelligent youth and an intelligent community, and I don't know if this is the right way of doing it.
Listen to teachers when you're making big decisions about policies. Leon, it's been a pleasure to have you as my guest today. Appreciate the magic you work in your classroom. On behalf of our young people, you're truly making a difference, touching young lives, and you're truly one of our community heroes.
Thank you for having me.
It's indeed our pleasure. And I'm Bill Cirone, signing off for Talking with Teachers. Teachers who bring to life the vital message, learn today, lead tomorrow. Public schools work.